Assalamu alaikum dear all. Our today's topic is selecting a sample. A sample refers to a smaller manageable version of a larger group or subset of a larger population. Using samples allows researchers to conduct their studies easily and in a timely fashion. A sample in a research study is the group on which information is obtained. The larger group to which one hopes to apply the result is called the population. The larger group to which one hopes to apply the result is called the population. All 700 or whatever total number of students in Punjab who are majoring in mathematics, for example, constitute a population. 50 of those students constitute a sample. Students who own automobiles make up another population, as do students who live in the campus dormitories. Defining the population. The first task in selecting a sample is to define the population of interest. In what group exactly is the researcher interested? To whom does he or she wants the results of the study to apply? The population, in other words, is the group of interest to the researcher, the groups to whom the researchers would like to generalize the results of the study. Here are some examples of population. All high school principals in Lahore, all elementary school counselors in the province of Sindh. The above example reveal that a population can be any size and that it will have at least one and sometimes several characteristics that set it off from any other population. Notice that a population is always all the individuals who possesses a certain characteristic or a set of characteristics. Here are two other examples. All 10th grade students in the Punjab, all gifted elementary school children in Lahore. The above mentioned examples illustrate two important points about population. First, population may be any size and may cover almost any geographical area. Secondly, the population of interest is usually a group of persons, for example, students, teachers, or other individuals who possesses certain characteristics. In some cases, however, the population may be defined as a group of classrooms, school, or even facilities. Target versus accessible populations. Unfortunately, the actual population called the target population to which a researcher would really like to generalize is rarely available. The population to which a researcher is able to generalize, therefore, is the accessible population. The former is the researcher's ideal choice, the latter his or her realistic choice. Thus, a distinction is made between the population to which the researcher would ideally like to generalize study results, the target population, and the population from which the researchers can realistically select subjects, which is known as a accessible or available population. Consider these examples. Research problems to be investigated. The effect of computer assisted instructions on the reading achievement of first and second graders in Punjab. Target population all first and second grade children in Punjab. Accessible population all first and second graders in Lahore. The sample might be 10% of the first and second grade children in Lahore. Research problem to be investigated. The attitude of fifth year teacher in training towards their students' teaching experience. Target population all fifth year students enrolled in teacher training program in Pakistan. Accessible population all fifth year students enrolled in teacher training program in the University of the Punjab. 200 fifth year students selected from those enrolled in the teacher training program in the PU. Random versus non-random sampling. There are main two types of sampling, probability and non-probability sampling. And probability sampling is sometimes also called random sampling. Here are examples. Random sampling, for example, the dean of a school of education in a large university wishes to find out how her faculty feel about the current sabbatical leave requirements at the university. He places all 150 names of the faculty in a hat, mixes them thoroughly, and then draws out the names of 25 individuals to interview. In this example, 25 names were selected from a hat after all the names had been mixed thoroughly. This is called random sampling because every member of the population, the 150 faculty members for example, presumably had an equal chance of being selected. The example of non-random sampling or non-probability sampling. The president of the same university wants to know how his junior faculty feels about a promotion policy that he has recently introduced. With the advice of a faculty committee, he selects a sample of 30 from the total faculty of 1,000 to talk with. 5 faculty members from each of the 6 schools that make up the universities are chosen on the basis of the following criteria. They have taught at the university for less than 5 years. They are non-tenured. They belong to one of the faculty association on campus, and they have not been a member of the committee that helped the president draft the new policy. In the second example, the president wants representativeness but not as much as he wants to make sure there are certain kinds of faculty in his sample. Thus, he has stipulated that each of the individuals selected must possess all the criteria mentioned. Each member of the population does not have an equal chance of being selected. Some, in fact, have no chance. Hence, this is an example of non-random sampling or non-probability sampling. Here is an example of probability sampling. For example, we have defined a certain population and we selected a sample randomly, and then the results can be generalized to the population from which that sample is selected. The second example is that we define the population and we have no chance to select the sample randomly. We use intact groups, but the assignment will be treated to these groups randomly, so results can be generalized to the population. Random sampling method. 4 basic techniques or procedures for selecting a random samples are given here: simple random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and systematic sampling. These techniques are also known as probability sampling techniques because they permit the researchers to specify the probability or a chance that each member of a defined population will be selected for the sample. Each technique requires the same basic steps such as identify the population, determine the required sample size, and select the sample. Simple random sampling. A simple random sample is one in which each and every member of the population has an equal and independent chance of being selected. If the sample is large, this method is best way yet devised to obtain a sample representative of the population of interest. Let's take an example. Define a population as all 8th grade students in school district Y. Imagine there are 500 students. If you were one of those students, your chance of being selected would be 1 in 500. If the sampling procedures were indeed random, everyone would have the same chance of being selected. The larger a random sample is in size, the more likely it is to represent the population. Although there is no guarantee of representativeness, of course, the likelihood of it is greater with large random samples than with any other method. Steps of simple random sampling. Identify and define the population, determine the desired sample size, list all members of the population, select by using random number table. Random number table. The key to obtaining a random sample is to ensure that each and every member of the population has an equal and independent chance of being selected. This can be done by using what is known as the table of random numbers, an extremely large list of numbers that has No order or pattern. Such list can be found in the back of most statistic books and even on the computer website. The example is given here. This is the part of a random number table. Stratified random sampling. Stratified sampling is a way to guarantee desired representation of relevant subgroup within the sample. In other words, some population can be subdivided into subgroups known as strata. Uh, One is called a stratum. Stratified sampling involves strategically selecting participants from each subgroup when a research goal is to compare the behavior of the participants from different subgroups of the population. Stratified sampling is the best approach. Proportional stratified sampling is the process of selecting a sample in such a way that identified subgroup in the population are represented in the sample in the same proportion in which they exist in the population. For example, a population of teachers in a district can be divided by a class level. If 22% of the teachers in a district are elementary teachers, 33 are middle school teachers, and 45 are high school teachers, a researcher may want to have a sample with the same proportion in each subgroup and would thus need to select a proportionally stratified sample. Typical variables for proportional stratification include demographic variables such as race, gender, socioeconomic status, and level of education. Stratified sampling can also be used to select equal size non-proportional samples from subgroups if subgroups comparisons are desired. Suppose, for example, that you were interested in comparing the achievement of students of different ability level, high, average, and low, who are taught by one of two methods of mathematical instruction. Simply selecting a random sample of students and assigning one half of the sample to each of the two methods would not guarantee equal representation of each ability level in each method. In fact, just by chance, one method could have only students of high and average ability, whereas the other could have students from average and low abilities. The random sampling could lead to almost any combination. To solve this problem, a researcher could first identify subgroup based on ability level and then randomly select students from each subgroup, assigning half of each selected group to each of the instruction methods. Stratified sampling used in this way would thus guarantee equal representation of the each ability level in each method. Note, however, that using proportionally sized group requires accurate information about the size of each group. If this information is not available, proportional group studies are not recommended. Steps of stratified random sampling: equal number, identify and define the population, determine desired sample size, identify the variable and subgroups for which you want to guarantee a specific representations, classify all members of the population as a member of one of the identified subgroups, randomly select using a random number tables an equal number of individuals from each group. As with simple random sampling, after the sample from each subgroup have been randomly selected, each may be randomly divided into two or more treatment groups. For example, if we were interested in the comparative effectiveness of two methods of mathematical instructions for the students with different levels of ability, the step in the sampling may be as follows. The population is all 300 8th grade students enrolled in general math at Central Middle School. The desired sample size is 45 students in each of the two methods. The variable is ability and the desired subgroups are three levels of ability: high, average, and low. The 300 students are classified into the subgroups which comprise 45 high ability students, 215 average ability students, and 45 low ability students. 30 students are randomly selected with assistance from a table of random number. From each of the ability group, that is of total 90 students are selected: 30 high, 30 average, and 30 low ability students. The 30 students In each subgroup, samples are randomly assigned to one of the two methods of instruction. That is, 15 of each 30 are randomly assigned to each method. Therefore, 45 students will participate in each method of instruction. 15 high ability students, 15 average ability students, and 15 low ability students. This example is illustrated in this picture. We have a total population of, for example, 300 8th grade students. We classify these 300 students as per their ability level. There are 45 high ability students, 215 average ability students, and 40 low ability students. We randomly select 30 from each of these three ability levels and then again randomly assign these 30 people to the two methods of instructions. An example of proportional stratified sampling. Suppose school superintendent wants to guarantee proportional representation of teaching level in his samples of teachers. The population is all 500 teachers. In the superintendent school system, the desired sample size is 10% of the 5,000 teachers or 500 teachers. The variable of interest is teaching level with three subgroups: elementary, middle, and high. We classify the teachers into subgroup. Of the 5,000 teachers, 65% are 3250 are elementary teachers, 20% are thousands are middle school teachers, and 15% are 750s are senior high school teachers. We want 500 teachers because we want proportional representation. 65% of the sample mean 325 teachers should be elementary teachers, 20% mean 100 teachers should be middle school teachers, and 15% mean 75% teachers should be the senior high school teacher. Using random number table, we can select a sample. Cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, intact groups, not individuals, are randomly selected. Any location within which we find an intact group of population member with similar characteristics is a cluster. Example of the clusters are classrooms, schools, city blocks, hospitals, and departmental stores. Cluster sampling may be the only feasible method of selecting sample when the researcher is unable to obtain a list of all members of the population. It is also convenient when the population is very large or spread over a wide geographic area. Steps in cluster sampling. The steps in cluster sampling are not very different from those in the random sampling. The major differences, of course, is that groups or clusters, not individuals, are randomly selected. Cluster sampling involves the following steps: identify and define the population, determine the desired sample size, identify and define a logical cluster, um, list all clusters that make up the population of clusters, estimate the average number of population members per cluster, determine the number of clusters needed by dividing the sample size by the estimated size of cluster, randomly select the needed number of clusters using a table of random numbers. Include in your study all population members in each selected cluster. An example of cluster sampling. Let's see how our superintendent would identify a sample of teacher if cluster sampling were used. We follow the step previously listed. The population is all 5,000 teachers in the superintendent school system. The desired sample size is 500. A logical useful cluster is a school. The superintendent has a list of all the schools in the district. There are 100 schools. Although the schools vary in the number of teachers per school, the average is 50 teachers per school. The number of the cluster to be selected equal to the desired sample size. 500 divided by the average size of the cluster, such as 50. Thus, the number of the schools needed is 500 divided by 50 means 10. 10 of the schools are randomly selected by assigning a number to each school and selecting a number from a random number of the tables. All the teachers in each of the 10 schools are in the sample, such as 10 school is equal to 50 teacher per school on average is equal to the desired sample size. Systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is not used very often, but in some instances it is only feasible way to select a sample. Systematic sampling is the sampling in which every case individual is selected from a list. The list includes all the individuals in the population, and k is the variable determined by dividing the number of individuals on the list by the number of subjects desired for the sample. If k is equal to 4, selection involves taking every kth name. If k is equal to 10, every 10th name is taken, and so forth. The major difference between systematic sampling and other type of sampling is that all members of the population do not have an independent chance of selection for the sample. After the first name is selected, all the rest of the individuals to be included in the sample are automatically determined. That is why some people don't consider this technique as a random sampling technique. Steps in systematic sampling. Systematic sampling involve the following steps: identify and define the population, determine the desired sample size, obtain a list of the population, determine K. By dividing the size of the population by the desired sample size, start at some random place in the population list. Close your eyes and stick your fingers on a name. Starting at that point, take every kth name on the list until the desired sample size is reached. If the end of the list is reached before the desired sample size is reached, go back to the top of the list again. An example of systematic sampling. If our superintendent uses systematic sampling, the process should be as follows. The population is all 500 teachers in the superintendent school system. As we previously discussed, the desired sample size is 500. The superintendent has a directory that lists all teachers in the system in an alphabetical order. The list is not randomly ordered, but it is the best available. K is equal to the size of population 5000 divided by the desired sample size 500. Thus, it can be a 10. Select one random name in the list of the teacher. Every 10th name after that point identifies a person who is automatically in the sample. For example, if the teacher selected in the step 5 were the third name on the list, then the sample would include the 13%, the 23rd%, 33rd%, 43rd%, and so forth. Now, the one of the most important question is what should be the sample, what should be the appropriate sample size in your research. You can apply some guidelines to determine whether a sample is big enough. In general, the minimum sample size depends on the type of the research involved. Actually, your topic dictates what is the most appropriate sample size. But here is a few guidelines that can guide you to select a sample. The larger the population size, the smaller the percentage of the population required to get a representative sample. For smaller population, say n is equal to 100 or fewer, there is a little point in sampling. Survey the entire population. If the population is around 500, 50% should be sampled. If the population size is around 1500, 20% should be sampled. Beyond a certain point, about n is equal to 5000, the population size is almost irrelevant, and a sample size of 400 will be adequate. Thus, the superintendent from our previous examples would be relatively safe with a sample of 400 teachers, but would be even more confident with a sample of 500. Sampling error and sampling bias. Error beyond that, within the control of the researcher, is a reality of random sampling. Selecting random samples does not guarantee that they will be the representative of the population, and no sample will have a composition precisely identical to that of the population. If we selected a sufficiently large, the sample should closely represent the population, but occasionally a sample will differ significantly from the population on some important variable. Remember, random means out of the researcher's control and the mercy of chance. This chance variation is called sampling error. In contrast to sampling error, which results from the random differences between samples and population, sampling bias is a systematic sampling error that is generally the fault of the researcher. It occurs when some aspects of the sampling creates a bias in the data. For example, suppose a researcher studying college students' attitude towards alcohol. Towards alcohol, the researcher asks the opinion of the people who are standing outside the bar. This sample would be biased because the study was to be about the attitudes of the college students, all type of college students. By sampling outside bar, the researcher systematically omitted college students who do not go to bar. The sampling bias in this study limits the study conclusions to a different population, students who go to bars. Thus, the researchers cannot generalize to the original population of interest. Selecting a non-random sample. Although random sampling technique provides the best opportunity to provide unbiased sample, researcher cannot always use random sampling due to practical constraints. For example, teachers or administrators often select the students or classes they want researchers to study to ensure a good impression or results in the outcome. And researchers often cannot find many people willing to participate in their study. Non-probability sampling, also called non-random sampling, is the process of selecting a sample using a technique that does not permit the researchers to specify the probability or the chance that each member of the population has of being selected for the sample. Non-random sampling methods do not have random sampling at any stage of sample selection and can introduce sampling bias. The first method is convenience sampling. Convenience sampling, also referred to as accidental sampling or haphazard sampling, is the process of including whoever happens to be available at that time. Two examples of the convenience sampling are seeking volunteers and studying existing groups just because they are there. For example, you have been part of the convenience sample if you have been stopped on the street or in the grocery stores by someone who wants your opinion of an event or of a new kind of muffin. Those who volunteer to answers are usually different from non-volunteers and they may be more motivated or more interested in a particular study. Because the total population is composed of both volunteers and non-volunteers, the result of the study based solely on volunteers are not likely generalized to the entire population. Purposive sampling. Purposive sampling, also referred as judgment sampling, is the process of selecting sample that is believed to be representative of a given population. In other words, the researchers select the sample using the experience and knowledge of the groups to be sampled. For example, if a researcher plans to study exceptional high schools, she can choose school to study based on her knowledge of exceptional schools. Prior knowledge or experience can lead the researchers to select exceptional high school that meet certain criteria, such as a high proportion of students going to 4 years college, a large number of advanced placement students, extensive computer facilities, and high proportion of teachers with advanced degrees. Snowball sampling is also a part of also a part of purposive sampling. In this type of sampling, researchers select a few people who fit a researcher's need, then using those participants to identify additional participants and so on until the researcher has a sufficient number of participants. Snowballing is most useful when it is difficult to find participants of the type needed. Quota sampling. Quota sampling is the process of selecting a sample based on required exact number or quotas of individual or groups with varying characteristics. It is most often used in wide-scale survey research when listing all members of the population of the interest is not possible. When quota sampling is involved, data gatherers are given exact characteristics and quotas of a person to be interviewed. For example, 35 working women with children under the age of 16-20, working women with no children under the age of 16. Obviously, when quota sampling is used, data are obtained from easily accessible individuals. Thus, people who are less accessible, more difficult to contact, more reluctant to participate are underrepresented. Sampling in qualitative research. Qualitative sampling is the process of selecting a small number of individuals for a study in such a way that the individual chosen will be good key informants. collaborators, co-researchers who will contribute to the researcher's understanding of a given phenomena. The characteristics of a good key informants include the ability to be reflective and thoughtful, to communicate orally in writing or both effectively with the researcher, and to be comfortable with the researcher's presence at the research site. As far as the data size is concerned, is the qualitative research, most of the qualitative researchers took a small sample size. And how we can decide the sample size? Sometime the data saturation is the term that we used for the identification of the sample size of the qualitative research participants. When the researchers began to hear the same thoughts, perspectives, and responses from most or all of the participants, additional participants are not needed, at least for that particular topic or issue. This point is commonly known as data saturation, and at this point, the researcher should stop taking data, and that size is sample size is more than enough. Here are few examples of are given where the students can calculate the different sample size. 3 slides are given. Kindly calculate these percentages of sample for different research studies to enhance your selecting effective sample skills. Thank you very much and stay blessed.